and also from the Ministry of Energy and Business in with us to talk a bit about these challenges, but more so the opportunities. We have with us Kevin Hunte. He is the Director of the International Business Division with the Ministry of Energy and Business. And from BIBA, we have Carmel Haynes, who is the Executive Director, and the President, Jamar Arthur-Selman. So stick around. We'll be talking about everything international business in a matter of moments. Back with you on The People's Business as we discuss global business, the opportunities and challenges. And we have a big week coming up, starting next week, that is, next Sunday, which is Global Business Week. A number of activities there will be to see and take part in. Those of you who want to be involved and get a bit more knowledge about what Barbados is doing in the realm of international business. Let me welcome back in my guest tonight, Kevin Hunte, the Director of the International Business Division with the Ministry of Energy and Business, and also Carmel Haynes, the Executive Director of BIBA, and Jamar Arthur-Selman. He is the President of BIBA, and BIBA did a rebranding back in 2020. So BIBA is now known as BIBA, the Association for Global Business. And I'll let the ladies on the panel start first, talk a bit about that rebranding and talk about what we can expect for Global Business Week 2022, the hybrid edition. Let's start with the rebranding first, Carmel. Good to see you as you are now the Executive Director of BIBA. So talk a bit about that rebranding first.
Yes, so as you might remember, Shane, we had gone through an exercise as a country where there was a removal of the what's called ring fencing from a tax perspective between the international business and the domestic business sectors, so that there is one harmonization of the tax rates. And when we chose to rebrand as BIBA, the Association for Global Business, it was in recognition of the fact that we're not just an association for international companies who are coming in from outside and setting up operations in Barbados, but we also want to embrace our own domestic companies who have a global focus and who, attract global clientele. And it's all part of this vision that the Prime Minister has to make Barbados a global business hub. So, we're really tapping into that vision, and we're trying to create that nexus between both international companies who might set up operations here and also domestic companies who are either already going global or ready to go global, and for us to be an embracing organization for them all.
And the sector is really only second to tourism, and it has the potential to possibly surpass. I know Barbados, it's a cultural thing for us to see tourism as the main money earner, but with how we are breaking down those barriers with global business, global and the international business sector, we've seen big earnings in the past, especially pre-pandemic, from the international business sector.
Correct. And so, that is all a part of our thrust for Global Business Week. It's really to help people understand the importance of the sector to both the economy and society of Barbados. We point out that we were probably the most resilient sector during the pandemic because of the fact that, our companies are accustomed to transacting cross-border. They were not so much focused on the domestic clientele, so they weren't able to continue operating. There was very little disruption in terms of when there was the switch to remote working, because a number of our companies were already practiced in that area. and also because they, again, their clients are overseas, they were able to continue operating even though they were working remotely. They were still able to service clients, stay open. So very minimal disruption in terms of sending home any staff or closing up any companies, etc. And so that is one of the things, especially in a hazard-prone area like the Caribbean, in which Barbados exists. You need a sector that can be resilient to shocks, both natural disasters, economic shocks, etc. And because of the span of focus of the global business sector, we have that opportunity to be resilient. And so, it's primarily international business and financial services, but we're seeing, new companies in the fintech space. We're seeing new companies in terms of pharmaceuticals that are focused on medicinal cannabis. We're seeing new companies in the alternative energy space. So all of that make up the gamut of global business in Barbados.
Indeed. I want to bring in Jamar here. Talk to me about why Global Business Week should be so important for Barbados, of course for BIBA, and the average man on the street.
Thank you, Shane. So you can follow on a little bit from what Carmel was talking about, and even your question as it related to, being second only to tourism. We like to think of the synergies that we have with those sectors as well. So Global Business Week is not only about sensitizing the average man on the street, as you call it. It's about updating, it's about bringing everyone together that operates within the sector. But the reason why this quote unquote average Barbadian should really be paying attention to it is because A, of its contribution to the general economy, and then the linkages that relate to that as well. So whether it's employment, whether it is the types of jobs created, whether it's the services that they use, and people like to have examples of things. So just to give you one or two, as it relates to tourism even. So it's not just from the resilience standpoint where we had us being able to operate fully virtual, so our sector didn't shut down during the pandemic, but also where there's no pandemic, where there's no hurricanes, etc. We also help contribute to that because part of one of the mainstays of our sector is that a lot of people have to travel to the island for the business that they do. They come in for board meetings, they come in to check on their businesses, they come in to invest in properties, real estate, etc. So as they're coming in, they're staying in hotels, they're eating in restaurants, they're taking taxis. And the businesses that crop up all around the global business sector also employ people. So in any operation that you have, whether it's whether it's a foreign client who set up a business here or whether it's a local business who's servicing those clients, they're going to do renovations to their offices. They're going to hire certain staff. They're going to have all the way from cleaners to accountants to any kind of job that you can think of that supports running any type of business. So what we do with Global Business Week is we not only keep the persons who are very familiar with the sector and its contribution up to date with things like our conference. We also give back to the community in terms of doing charitable activities, and a little bit later we'll probably talk about our, the 5K run and walk that we're going to get into that helps contribute to charitable events in Barbados. But we also have a public discussion forum which brings in the general public of Barbados who are invited to attend. We also think of the future of global business as well, which is, there's this old saying that the children are the future. So we have a secondary school symposium, we have a career showcase that help to let persons who are interested from a very early age in trying to understand what a career in global business may look like, really come face to face with people practicing in those sectors, within those professions, and interact one-on-one to see, is this something that would be right for me, and what's my study path, what's my career path, how do I get into it, how can I make a contribution? So that is really a little bit about why Global Business Week is so important generally, and to the average person or the persons who are already very much familiar with what we do in the sector.
Yes, good that BIBA can cover all of the bases, especially as far as those secondary schools are concerned. And we would want to delve a bit more into that to get a real snapshot of what the children would be seeing to encourage them to get involved in what can be a really lucrative sector, and the level of employment that can be generated because it covers cross borders really. Kevin, talk to us about the ministry's involvement and the division's involvement in Global Business Week?
Well, I thank you, Shane, and good evening, Barbados, and good evening to my co-presenters. The ministry has always been partnering with BIBA before and after rebranding. And our role, since we primarily service our service providers, we operate as regulators for the corporate and trust service providers. We are the ones that are responsible for the negotiation of double taxation treaties between Barbados and other jurisdictions, bilateral investment treaties. We are the ministry and the division that is responsible for the implementation of what is known as economic substance, and therefore the regulation of entities that are responsible for filing the economic substance declaration. Therefore, if I can quote the President of the Senate, the ministry is responsible for establishing the floor and the ceiling for the global business space, and thereby allowing BIBA and its members, and indeed any person or entity that's involved in that global business space, to plug their trade and to function as their companies between that floor and the ceiling. We operate as the contact point between Barbados and our international regulators, such as the OECD, that is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and their various sub-bodies within the OECD. And then we're also the focal point for interactions with the European Union. And so the ministry plays a very vital role in ensuring that on the international front, that Barbados meets all of its obligations to ensure that we're compliant with all of the regulations and standards, and also to make room for corporate and trust service providers to function and ensure that they too are compliant with the local standards that have been imposed as a result of our international obligation. So one of the ways that we function within the Global Business Week sector is to provide what we may have called a status update in relation to the regulatory framework in Barbados, where we let those participants know how Barbados is doing on an international regulatory scene, where we provide any information and feedback and tips to our corporate trust service providers as to how they can better function, where we also advise as to if there are any legislative or regulatory updates that they need to be aware of. So really and truly, it's a partnership between the ministry, specifically the International Business Division within the ministry, and BIBA, and indeed those other service providers who are not part of BIBA, or those other business entities. But really and truly, BIBA provides quite a wide range and umbrella service in pulling service providers and corporate entities together.
And I mean, Barbados has had a tough road in ensuring that it stays on track as far as regulations are concerned. I remember a number of grey listings and threats of blacklisting as well regarding Barbados's compliance. But things have settled down significantly. What is the status right now?
Okay, there's certain elements of the status right now that I can't go into at this point in time.
What can you tell us?
In a few weeks' time, that I will be able to. But what I can tell us is that primarily when we hear of grey listings and black listings, that is coming from the European Union. That is not the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. What happens is that the European Union uses the various assessments of the OECD for their different sub-bodies within the OECD. And then the European Union devises its listing process based on the outcome of those assessments. Very often they add additional requirements to those requirements coming from the OECD, although to be fair, within recent times there have been tremendous efforts to harmonize and streamline those particular requirements. The grey list is the EU, EU's way of indicating that the countries that are on the grey list are what is properly called Annex 2, that those countries are working towards the implementation of either a certain legislative advancements and amendments that need to take place, or B, that that particular country or jurisdiction is being observed for its effectiveness in the implementation of those rules and regulations. And so that is the EU's perspective on the grey list. The blacklist or Annex 1 really and truly refers to a jurisdiction that is deemed as uncooperative and a jurisdiction that is not taking into account its obligations, and they have neither implemented any laws that are required to be implemented, neither is that particular jurisdiction effectively regulating its space. What has happened over the last few years is that there's been tremendous dialogue and involvement on the part of the ministry, not only the ministry, but also the Barbados Revenue Authority and Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property Office and the Financial Services Commission, and the Central Bank of Barbados. All of the regulators have really been working together to ensure that we meet the international standards and requirements. There have been some hiccups on the way, some on our side, and others that are more or less in line with perhaps some policies and ideologies that we quite do not agree with on the part of the European Union. But I can tell you that over the last 2 years, there has been tremendous improvement in the dialogue between Barbados and the European Union and the various bodies within the European Union that contribute towards the listing process. And Barbados has expended enormous amounts of energy, time, finances, where we have made adjustments to our laws, where we have made adjustments to the various regulators. The government has sought to ensure that the regulators are as staffed as they possibly can and that they're as adequately resourced and equipped as they possibly can to conduct the business that these regulators are responsible for. So what you're seeing, Shane, is that Barbados is moving towards becoming a very well-oiled machine from an international perspective as it relates to meeting all of our various standards. And I'm sure many businesses can attest that they have either been contacted by various regulators, they have received various pieces of correspondence, some of them have even been inspected to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And so we are looking towards becoming and continuing to be a very well-regulated jurisdiction without being overly regulated to be a deterrent to the global business that we want to attract.
Because at the end of the day, that global business brings the level of investment that the government is trying to get here to really continue with this growth impetus for the economy. And we'll talk a bit more about that after this break. For you who want to chime in tonight on the People's Business, you know those numbers to call. 228-5562, 228-5563 with your questions or comments for our guests right here as we talk about global business, the opportunities and challenges, and Global Business Week 2022. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a few. So I want to continue our conversation as we focus on the Global Business Week and global business generally and what is happening with the sector. Coming on the heels of what Kevin was just speaking about, some of the trends in international business. Carmel, are we seeing more and more companies encouraged to come into our space to set up shop and run their businesses, creating some level of employment here on the ground for Barbadians? What are the general trends right now as far as the sector is concerned? Coming out of the pandemic, that is.
Yeah, I can definitely say encouragement is happening. You know, BIBA works very closely with Invest Barbados, which is the Inward Investment Promotion Agency of government. We actually sit on their board as well, and we have partnered with them in several exercises, trade missions, etc., looking to attract new business into Barbados. One of the trends that we had seen, particularly during the pandemic, was a growth in our captive insurance sector. And in a nutshell, what that is companies or even organizations such as universities, hospitals, etc., who are having challenges getting commercial insurance at reasonable rates, or even having some of the risks that they want covered, perhaps in relation to loss of employees during the pandemic, etc. And we're having challenges on the market, the international market for insurance, and couldn't find the particular rates or the coverage they were looking for. They chose to set up companies, insurance companies, where they could reinsure their own risks. And we actually saw quite a bit of growth. Barbados is ranked in the top 6 for captive insurance domiciles in the world. And during the pandemic, we have competitors in Cayman and Bermuda, and we were seeing greater growth. According to AM Best, we were actually outpacing those jurisdictions in terms of the growth that they were seeing here, particularly for U.S. entities interested in setting up captives. So that was one of the interesting trends coming out of the pandemic. And as I said, we have also seen some interest in companies in the medicinal cannabis space setting up here, and also, again, fintech companies. So we do have quite a number of new fintechs that are members of BIBA as well. We have companies who are interested, in programming, creating alternative securities markets, etc., using fintech. So it's an interesting time now in global business. But in terms of actual numbers, you would probably have to consult the director, Kevin, and ask him what he's seeing on his end, because they do actually track the numbers, whereas we would only be aware of companies once they're here and become members of BIBA. They would actually see the trends in terms of who's registering, licensing, etc.
And you are under the bus. Let's bring you on the road to talk about what you're seeing as far as those numbers are concerned. Are we seeing a satisfying level of growth in the international business sector?
So the areas that Carmel identified are absolutely correct, particularly within the insurance sector. Obviously, I didn't come prepared to give exact stats tonight, but the areas she identified are absolutely correct. I can say that the sector has not suffered tremendously as a result of the pandemic. It has proven to be quite resilient. And I would say that we are satisfactory. But does that mean that we need to relax? No, I don't think so. And I think that in addition to the work that BIBA is doing, and the work that Invest Barbados is doing, by way of promoting Barbados as a jurisdiction of choice for global business, is something that we need to take far and wide, as far as we can get that message across the globe. And indeed, when you interact with many of the businesses here, they want to stay. They've fallen in love with Barbados. They've fallen in love with the Barbadian people, the Barbadian way of life, and they indeed have no intention of leaving. However, that does not mean that there are not areas that we need to improve so that they will continue to want to stay, and B, also encourage other entities to come here. But we are seeing, particularly in what we will call the geographical mobile services, we are seeing quite a large number of insurance companies. We are seeing holding company business. We are seeing intellectual property business. We are seeing an increasing distribution. We're seeing finance and leasing. So there are a number of areas that the businesses are either remaining steady and stable or increasing. And when you look at the contribution goes beyond a tax perspective. The contribution lies in terms of persons who are employed. We see contributions in terms of premises that are leased. We see contributions to the society in terms of various give back programs and involvement in various charitable events and charitable organizations. So these businesses that come into Barbados, yes, they pay their fair share by way of taxation, but they are also contributing majorly to the Barbadian economy and the Barbadian society.
There's always concern about red tape, though. Red tape for some of these businesses to actually set up shop. Is it easier to do business now that we are emerging from the pandemic?
What I would say to that, Shane, is that government across the length and breadth of government, there has been a move and a push towards the utilization of technology and the digital space to ensure that there is an improvement in the facilitation of business, which is where you're going. And part of our ministry, division within our ministry, a department within our ministry, is the Corporate Affairs and Electoral Property Office. And while I dare not represent our registrar, Mr. Michelle Rochester, I can say that CAIPO has taken tremendous strides towards the implementation of the digital system. And that digital system is proving to be a tremendous help. Is it by any means perfect? No, it's not. But we have come a long way, and it is still not finished. There's still other elements and components of that digital system to be rolled out. And CAIPO is working extremely hard to ensure that once the system is completely rolled out, that our customers will see a seamless experience in terms of registering their business. But that's only one aspect in terms of CAIPO. There are other agencies that are involved. There are other professionals that are involved in terms of businesses being established, from the attorneys, of which Mr. Arthur-Selman is a very competent one, to accountants, to other parts of government, depending on if persons are coming from overseas and they're looking to relocate or take up residency here. And for example, there have been tremendous strides made within our immigration department, and our immigration department is being lauded really and truly as one of the departments that is held up as a standard bearer in terms of their turnaround and how they've been able to revamp and reinvent the various processes and produce results. And so I think that once we keep on this trajectory, as a government, we are international business. We're also employing the use of technologies on various digital platforms. Once we keep on this track in terms of using technology, once we keep on the track of ensuring that the human personnel are both equipped and trained, I think that Barbados is well on the way to becoming truly that destination of choice for global business.
And how you describe it is really in line with the theme for Global Business Week, which is adapt, evolve, and execute. And that's what, as you mentioned, elements and some sections of government, what they're doing, they're executing and being the change. That's what we want to see. Jamar, talk a bit about, you mentioned focusing on the youth. They're the future of the international business sector. You want to get more of them involved, see the opportunities, and you really have a big focus on them during the week with the secondary school showcase and also the virtual public discussion forum. Talk a bit about the focus on them. What do you want the message to be for them, for those youngsters who maybe see opportunities in the international business sector for a long-term career and a really viable career in the sector?
You really have to focus on what people don't know and just what a little bit of information can lead to. For example, when I came into this sector more than a decade ago, I had no idea that it existed. I thought I would come in and I would be an attorney doing the traditional things that attorneys do, which they do very well. On entering the workforce and the working world, I just so happened to see an advertisement for a corporate and trust service provider looking for a young attorney who didn't have to have that much experience, and they were willing to kind of train you and bring you up. And fast forward, like I said, more than a decade now, here I am, being able to speak on the topic, being the president of the association. And that is all because of just a little bit of information and opportunity. And that's kind of the way in which we want to bridge the gap between the youth of Barbados who may not be aware of everything that's going on in the sector, there's a lot of people who hear of the global business sector, and they have one image of it, and we're trying to dissuade that, and we're also trying to bring them in. So when we do these events, such as the secondary school symposium and the virtual career showcase, it's really meant to be very, very practical. It's not meant to be any smoke and mirrors. It's not meant to be something that they can't visualize. They're put in a room, virtual or in person, with actual professionals who practice day to day. So in the case of the virtual career showcase, for example, we have breakout rooms, and we have them actually, sit and talk with and engage with persons from a wide range of professions that you would see, and that who actually do work in the global business sector, whether it be accountants, whether it be lawyers, whether it be actuaries. It doesn't matter. It's a wide cross section, so they can see that there's a multitude of career paths to go there. It could even be something. Support services. It could be persons who are good at dealing and specializing in particular areas. We have a lot of businesses in the sector, for example, who tend to gravitate towards having people who speak multiple languages. So, there's a lot that comes out in these sessions that really engage young persons to see, well, wow, I didn't even realize that's something that I was already interested in. There's a version of that I can do within the global business sector. And on the other end of the spectrum, the secondary school symposium, that is bringing those much younger students, again, into a location and really have wonderful presentations being made to them to show them not just an overview, but the practicality of things. So I think this year we have a few special presentations. We're going to have themes and topics that really relate to global business and you. So global business and you is one of the topics. We have people giving presentations in relation to a little bit about what Kevin touched on before, which is interacting with, like, for example, the corporate registry, how to register a business, how to incorporate a company, because it's not just about careers and professions. It's also a little bit about entrepreneurship as well. If that's a career path that the youth of Barbados seems to be a lot more interested in these days, especially coming out of the pandemic. So there's something there for everyone, and you cannot underestimate, like I said, the power of just having that little bit of information to know that not only does the sector exist and its importance, but the fact that anyone can get involved in it, and there's a wide cross sections of professions that are open and available to you.
Yeah, and I want to come back to talk about the demand. Where are the areas of demand in the sector? But we do have a caller on the line. We want to get that in before we go to our next break. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. Sorry for keeping you waiting. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, good night, Shane, to you and the guests.
Hey,
it's hard to be global, but it's hard to be global. It's hard to be noble too. There's a lot of people coming in and taking up Barbadian jobs, and are the Barbadians getting the same opportunities outside? That's the question I want to ask.
So, Carmel, I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to let you take that one. Is it fair game? Unless Jamar.
Well, I mean, either, but I was going to say that it is actually very interesting that he would say so, because we do have one of our members that is a very large corporation, that one of the the things that they have said to us is that what they're seeing is that they invest in training local Barbadians, get qualified to a point where they are that very high caliber, world class, and they're being snapped up by companies in Canada, by companies in the US. So there are definitely, two things. One, the global business sector actually employs primarily Barbadians, right? And they're Barbadians right up to the highest level. I mean, our president, Jamar, is the general manager of the company, of Centralis, which is, a Swiss based company that has a presence here. So pardon me, Luxembourg based. Thank you, Jamar. That has a presence here. So, the international companies are very willing to hire highly skilled, competent Barbadians to head up their operations here. It's not a case of, the top level being foreigners and then everybody below being Barbadians. You have Barbadians right to the top. But then, as I said, you are also seeing a number of Barbadians who are being, snapped up, poached, and being encouraged to then work for companies overseas. But Jamar, I know you said you also wanted to tackle that question.
Yes, I'm really glad the caller asked the question because it's one of those myths that you also want to get rid of very quickly. So one of the interesting things that we see with a lot of clients who have been setting up in Barbados is that aside from all of the other advantages that we have, one of the key drivers is a skilled workforce in Barbados, and that's something that they really salivate over. They're very very impressed with the candidates that when they're seeking to fill out the roles within the organization. Let's say, for example, they've moved the business unit from Canada or the U.S. to Barbados, and they're thinking of they need whatever the professions are they need, they can find them here and they employ them here. And what ends up happening, I think Carmel touched a little bit on it, is that you get a certain level of knowledge transfer as well. So it's a very synergistic approach that you have with what we are gaining versus what they're gaining. So it's not really about it's not really to think of it in terms of losing or gaining jobs, because there really is a net positive to Barbadians, as Caramel mentioned, but it's a little bit more than that. It's not only skills and expertise that we gain that we then pass on to other Barbadians as well, to the point where you look back at some companies here where when they first came, they had to actually move an individual from their country to Barbados because that expertise didn't exist on the island at the time. Fast forward 10, 20 years, because of that knowledge share has transcended throughout the Barbados society in different people working in different roles, and now that expertise is just here in Barbados, period, and there's no longer any need to transpose persons. So even where you have examples of people having to come to work here, they're not coming to work here to take an existing job. They're coming here because the expertise didn't exist, and then they're leaving that knowledge and expertise here, and Barbadians are becoming experts in turn in that. And then on the second end of it, you then have the roles which there's not any type of specialized knowledge required, employing a multitude of people. In companies I've worked for in the past, in my current company, I've seen entities come and employ in one go 14 people in for one company, 20 something people for another company. It can be low as 3 or 4 people in one company. So the sector really does create more jobs than anything.
Well, let's take a quick break here. Let's pause here, and we'll come back to talk a bit more about those jobs in the international business sector and where the areas of demand are. So we'll take a break and be right back in a matter of moments as we discuss global business, the opportunities and the challenges. So as we delve into all that is involved in Global Business Week 2022 and the international business sector, we want to hear, where are the jobs in international business? Where can people find the jobs? Where are there in multitude? Where are there many jobs in the international business sector? Because I think generally here in Barbados, there's always this concept that it's hard to find a job. So let's find out where are the areas that these jobs can be found in the international business sector. Carmel, talk to me. Where are you seeing the demand?
There's just a little bit of feedback there. So really and truly, as we were just discussing, or as Jamar was pointing out, the traditional jobs just can be found in the sector, just with an international flavor. So the sector hires from, cleaners, as I was saying, janitors, they hire messengers, they hire admin assistants, and then you go up the chain, and of course they need lawyers, accountants, etc. But it's just that what you're operating in is a multinational or international space where you're dealing with transactions that are not, you're not just doing a run-of-the-mill conveyance or run-of-the-mill bookkeeping, but you're actually looking at or dealing with companies that are trading internationally and that have international clients where you are managing their portfolios, etc. So we just want people to not think of, and this goes back to what Jamar was saying about demystifying. We don't want people to think that this is like some sort of magical space and you need to break into it or know somebody, etc. Once you are competent in the sort of back office skills that many of these businesses need, you can find a job in the sector. Because, for example, again, you see Gildan there on the highway. And that is one of our members. And one of the reasons that Gildan is here is because they do their marketing, their logistics, their accounting, etc. For their global operations takes place in that large complex that they have just off of the highway in Newton. So Jamar, I don't know if you want to expand further on that question.
Sure. So another example is, so Carmel has kind of laid the groundwork to show you that at all levels there are employment opportunities there. Some further examples would be that some people don't normally think of is persons who are multilingual, for example. I've seen clients come and operate in this space, and they're looking specifically to perfect example. Years ago, I had a client that had set up basically a call center from Barbados, and they were going to be servicing certain provinces in Canada that French was the shared language. French and English were the languages that are used. So persons could call and require assistance in both English and French. And a lot of persons, when the advertisement went out, it was basically, okay, well, here's an opportunity for a person who has studied and maybe has a degree in the language, is very fluent in it, but is also good with customer service. So you get those combination of skills, and there's an opportunity created. Along the more traditional line, you have accountants and lawyers who may be dealing with the non-traditional areas and have an opportunity to take that to the next level. So for example, Kevin mentioned earlier about the types of formations that the ministry has been seeing in terms of holding companies, in terms of finance and leasing companies. So in a finance and leasing company, for example, you'll find that there is a great demand for accountants who have a finance background and are able to, it's not just bookkeeping, but it's also things such as intercompany debt management, it's being a finance and treasury officer for the company, making reports to the board of directors, monitoring loans, etc. So again, skills and expertise meets the need, and the need is created by those businesses operating in and from Barbados. So one other example I can give you is also the IT space. I've seen clients come and set up centers where the IT support is actually done from Barbados for their international clients, specifically out of the USA, for example. And that is another situation where you have 10 or more people who are able to operate and be paid from this company to do those services from Barbados. Now, the IT space is one where you have sometimes a limit. Some people find that there's sometimes a limit in terms of the jobs available for persons who are dedicated in IT. You get a lot of entrepreneurship coming out of that space sometimes as well. But on a small island such as Barbados, there's only so much business to go around. So that's another avenue for persons who are in that IT space. Opportunity created on a global scale right here from Barbados.
And it will be wonderful if you can paint these pictures for the students during Global Business Week to give them a better understanding of where they can go next and what avenues they would need to take to be involved in what can be a very, very lucrative career. And as far as I understand, in terms of remuneration in this sector, it's pretty good when you compare it to other sectors across the board. So hopefully you can get that message across as well during Global Business Week. I want to hear about the projections, though, for the sector over the next few years. We're easing out of the pandemic. Yes, we are still in the midst of COVID-19, but eventually, very soon, I think it would be safe to say that we will be exiting the pandemic. Kevin, if you can, what are the growth projections for the sector looking like going into 2023?
Going into 2023, from the ministry's perspective, one of the things that we would love to see is an increase in something called foreign currency permit holders. Now, the foreign currency permit is not a type of company, but it is a permit, and that permit facilitates companies to be able to achieve certain benefits, and those benefits are predicated upon the fact that those companies bring foreign exchange into Barbados. And as you will know, foreign exchange is absolutely vital, as we are a country that requires foreign exchange in order to be able to purchase various goods and commodities from the international market. And so part of the impetus, part of the encouragement for companies to bring that foreign exchange to Barbados is that they apply for to the ministry, particularly the National Business Division, foreign currency permit. And that foreign currency permit, the only requirement for that is that they are earning 100% of their income in foreign currency. And obviously, we would prefer that foreign currency to be U.S. dollars, etc., which is one of the more tradable currencies internationally. Now, we would love to see those numbers increase, and those numbers can only increase as companies come to Barbados. As I said, it's a permit. And so we will be working, and we are working with, yes, BIBA and also Invest Barbados to encourage entities across the board to come to Barbados. Now, one of the ways that we're also doing that is by increasing our treaty network, or bilateral investment treaty network. And we've been able to see increases, particularly within the African continent. And we're looking at certain areas within the eastern side of the globe as well. And so once we are able to create that particular space where we will then have the encouragement, yes, the businesses will be entitled to flow in both directions, both from Barbados to those other jurisdictions, but also from those jurisdictions to Barbados, then we are able to get those foreign currency permit numbers up. Indeed, this is an exercise that government has gone through very recently. While I'm not necessarily at liberty to share certain of that information here, I can indicate to you that it's a holistic effort, not just the effort of the Ministry of Energy and Business, but it's a holistic effort on the part of government to create the space to make room for entities to come to Barbados so that we get those numbers up for the foreign currency permit. There are also other areas. There's another area, for example, called the trust area. And right now on the ministry, we do have a committee that has been created and is working very hard to completely overhaul and revamp our trust regime. And once we've been able to achieve that, which we hope to achieve, Shane, by the end of the year, Barbados will then also be able to sell itself even more so as a trust destination. And that's another avenue of business that we then will be able to look to track to see how that area is particularly growing. It has not been one that has been tremendously populated within recent years, hence the need to revamp, and that's why we are revamping, and we want to see in 2023 an increase in the trust companies coming to Barbados, or companies or entities occupying the trust space. So I hope I've been able to answer your question, Shane, as best as I could. But we are working very, very hard to ensure that there is an increase in business, which will translate to the benefit not only of our economy, but indeed of our society as a whole.
Yeah, indeed. A lot of food for thought there, and some news stories too, I can tell you that for sure. We'll take a final break, and then when we come back, we'll get some last words about Global Business Week, what you Barbadians who want to take the opportunity to see what's involved in the international business sector can expect, and how you can get involved as well. We'll be back after this break. So as we focus on Global Business Week 2022, we want to just inform you about how you can be involved, how you can be a part of it all. Of course, tonight we've been speaking to Carmel Haynes and Jamar Arthur-Selman, both senior members of BIBA, and also with us Kevin Hunte, the Director of the International Business Division in the Ministry of Energy and Business. So Carmel, tell our viewers how they can be involved in Global Business Week 2022. How can they be a part of it all?
Well, so Global Business Week, as you know, anybody who's been listening to the entire program would have heard there are a number of activities. So along with the school symposium and the virtual career showcase, we also have a public discussion forum, which is also going to be held virtually on the Monday evening, and that's specifically going to be looking at the topic of the digital ID and authentication. So we're very happy that we're going to have the Minister of Industry, Science and Smart Technology, Honorable Davidson Ishmael, to lead off that discussion. And it's going to be a panel discussion which is really looking at the whole idea of, authenticating identity. What are the experiences in other countries? Is it really necessary, etc. So we anticipate it's going to be a very interesting discussion. And then the other major public event that we're going to have is at the end of the week, which is going to be our BIBA Charity 5K. We're very pleased to be returning to in-person. So this is going to be, a heart-healthy, fun run, fun walk, which is going to start at Copacabana, start and end at Copacabana, by traversing the surrounding area through Belleville, coming back along Chelsea Road, down to Bay Street, and then back to Copacabana. And so this is, as you would have heard Kevin mention earlier in the conversation, this goes back to the contribution that the global business sector makes to Barbados. So we set up in 2010 a charitable foundation called the BIBA Charity, through which our members channel funds to assist the public healthcare system of Barbados. We've given over $1 million in equipment so far to the QEH hospital and the polyclinics. And especially during the pandemic, we did also help equip Harrison Point with some BiPAP ventilation machines, and also PEP, etc. And we also gave about $40,000 contribution to the Vulnerable Families Program through the support of our members. So the BIBA Charity, this is not only a fundraising effort, but it's also another way for us to bring friends and families together to really interact with the membership of BIBA and to just have a relaxing afternoon. And then, of course, during the week is our flagship conference, Global Business Conference, which takes place from October 26th to 28th. And it's a mixture of plenary sessions and workshops, which are going to be looking at a whole gamut of topics of interest to the global business and also the general business community in Barbados. We're going to be looking at the metaverse and what it means for global business. Kevin and some of the other regulators are going to be on a panel so that members and other business persons can get an understanding of what the regulators are looking at, what's coming down the pipeline, what they're seeing. We're also going to be having some discussions surrounding the future of international financial centers. And also we are going to have Justin Ram, who former economist with the CDB, looking at the global economic picture for 2022 and beyond. And that's just like a flavoring of the topics. As I said, it's 2.5 days, so there are many more topics to discuss.
Yeah. In a few seconds, Jamar, if you can tell me, for you, what would be a successful Global Business Week 2022 look like?
Listeners that they can, if they need any more information about anything we've talked about, they can reach us at the BIBA Secretariat at 537-2422. And our website for Global Business Week is www.gbw.biba.bb. So with that being said, a successful Global Business Week for me is to see that level of engagement from the general public in the activities that are open for mass attendance. It is about seeing the inspiration in the youth that we reach out to in choosing a career path in the sector, which assures that the future of the sector is on the right path. And of course, it's having a valuable contribution to the persons who currently operate in this sector during our conference, continuing to share information, continuing to bring them together, share ideas, and have real meaningful discussions and actions coming out of all of the events that we have, and continuing to keep the global business sector on the radar and on the minds of all Barbadians.
I'm pretty sure that you will get a great response, and I'm hoping that the young people will really get that opportunity to see where the opportunities are in the sector. Of course, Kevin is going to be on the panel, so they'll get to hear from him as well. He can give some direction on government's end, but I really want to thank the three of you for spending some time with me here tonight on The People's Business, educating our viewers on what the sector is all about and where we are going, where the sector is going, and how we're going to grow the sector and really create more jobs and opportunities for average Barbadians. Thank you, and of course I got to say a big thank you to our viewers as well for spending some time with us here on a Sunday night to take in all that has been The People's Business as we focused on global business and opportunities and challenges. Global Business Week is from the 23rd to the 29th. See how you can get involved. You heard the contact numbers, and we'll be sharing more information in the days ahead. I'm Shane Seeley. Good night.